Oh, it's me again. Today I'm going to be doing a little video regarding what Barbara Honegger had said to me in email. And last night she sent me an email. We're actually in a group email talking about the issue of the Pentagon, whether or not American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon. Barbara Honegger contends that it was a white plane that crashed into the heliport, and then a bomb exploded on the outer part of the wall from inside, which is how you saw the big explosion at the Pentagon. And she contends it happened at 9:30. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play a part of the video in which she's referring to. Now, the email, as you can see, I grade the part where we're going to be concentrating on. You've apparently not seen my presentation at the March 19 Pentacon conference, or if you did, you didn't pay attention, as it gives the evidence for the swap of Flight 77. Now, that's what we're going to be concentrating on that, because in that video that she's talking about the Pentacon conference. I think was held on March 13th of 2022, in which you had many competing theories that were coming from people like Barbara Honegger, Thierry Masson, Craig McKee and Adam Ruff, and David Chandler and Wayne Costi. And David Chandler and Wayne Costi was the only two people that actually brought physical, analytical, and technical data to support the evidence of Flight 77 crash into the Pentagon. So the part in which I'm going to share with you in the Barbara Honegger conference, it's 10 minutes long. It's not long at all. This is not going to be an hour-long video or something like that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to play parts of the video where I'm going to stop and contend with documentation about some of the points that she raises, which are quite troubling on her part. And let's get on with it.
What happened to Flight 77?
Well, you know what? Before I'm sorry. Before I do that, I just want to make this quite clear. This is going to be a rather cordial response. There are no ad hominems here, and this is nothing more than a friendly critique of what she's saying. So I just wanted to make that clear. So, and here she is, Barbara Honegger, in the 9/11 Pentacon conference that was hosted by Richard Gage and Gail Gage, his wife.
What happened to Flight 77 before the Pentagon is just as important, if not more important, than what happened at the Pentagon.
These are all the points that she's going to raise throughout this brief summary.
There's evidence, compelling evidence, converging evidence that Flight 77 was swapped for the eastward flying plane. So it wasn't Flight 77 at Pentagon at all. And we already know that. It was a white plane.
Well, I mean, if we already knew that, it would be demonstrable, right? If we already knew that, you wouldn't need to present this case, but you're trying to persuade an audience that doesn't know that's the case, right? But the majority of the people that were already at the Pentagon disagree with your hypothesis. And they're the most important people. And I'm going to show another part of the email where she contends that she selectively, where she selects certain witnesses that who she finds that are agreeable to her narrative.
Pentagon. The answer to that they would never do such a thing, of course, is Operation Northwoods. Indianapolis Air Traffic Control radar tracked and reported Flight 77 that had left Dulles Airport at around 8:20, 8:21 in the morning. They reported on their radar screens that it descended from 35,000 to 29,000 feet, 6,000 feet before the turn, and had likely crashed, and reported a likely crash to Air Force search and rescue, versus the official story radar, which is relied upon by the advocates for Theory D in this conference, the official story radar, quote, shows, unquote, that the plane didn't descend at all until after the turn. And because the same physical plane cannot do both, there was a plane swap. We've already talked about how the CR and therefore also the FDR cannot have been from Flight 77. Here is a...
The CIA has been developing plans for covert operations that involve the in-flight swapping of commercial airliners with military drones since the 1960s.
I don't know why she showed that, but I guess she's trying to implement a visual into your mind before she gives the presentation. That came from, I believe, Pearl Harbor film by Massimo Mancuso. Yeah, I don't know what that was about, by the way.
Okay, I've already, down here, when you go to my PowerPoint, be sure and go to this page, and it will show you that Indianapolis Air Traffic Control watched on radar and officially reported that Flight 77 began its descent while still flying west, unlike the official radar data that my colleagues.
Well, look, you know what? Let's go back for a minute here, okay? Because she doesn't really explain in detail. She just shows these slides, and you know, there's so much data in 10 minutes. I mean, you know, you're overwhelmed because you can't really respond. I mean, it's a problem I have with her regarding our presentations. You know, behind the smoke curtains, like 3 hours long, but it's like an enormous amount of data that she produces in the documentary. And, you know, I get the complaint that, you know, me and my co-researcher, DJ Thermal Detonator, where our films or our refutation videos are too long, 2 or 3 hours long, but they're not long like Honegger, like 3 hours. You know, that Pearl Harbor film by Massimo Mancuso, I think, is 4 hours. There's no complaints there. You know, I know who's watching this. I'm having a little fun. Anyway, so let's talk about this radar, which she's referring to as the flight data recorder. But it says here, through the Indianapolis FAA Air Traffic Control, watched on radar, officially reported that Flight 77, the Dulles plane, begins a descent at 8:54 while still flying west with its transponder was still on, well before the official radar has the eastward flying swap plane. Begins its descent at 9:01 while flying east. Well, this part is nothing more than fantasy. And she gives no descriptive, you could see it, she passed right up on it. She didn't explain any of this, and it's not backed by any of the flight data recorder analytical data, nor radar data either. So there's that. Now the radar data, basically, even when the transponder was off, still had the blip on the screen with the information. Now, what you can't see is the altitude, right? But there's still radar data. As long as somebody's keeping track on the initial data of the radar screen, it'll say AA77, the altitude, and the direction, whether it's 10,000 feet, longitude west, longitude east, right? But with the transponder off, the altitude is off, but the radar blip is still there as long as the person is concentrating on the blip. And that's what happened with 93 and 77. Because at that point, everybody was watching the screen because of what happened with 11 and 175. And that's coming from Indianapolis ATC. And I'm going to play you the audio because at no point does it say what she thinks it says. In regards to the descent, well, I mean, let's take a look at the flight path study, which is basically the FDR flight data recorder box, which survived and was found on September 13th by two first responders, Carlton Berkhammer and Brian Morovitz, in which they found the flight data recorder box. And when they did find it, they actually pointed it out to the FBI. FBI actually called someone from the National Transportation Safety Bureau to identify it as the flight data recorder, and it was. So let's take a look at the flight data recorder, shall we? The information. So as you can see, pressure altitude, right? Its descent starts at letter D, right? Airplane heading east. This is when they make the turn back toward Washington, because Dulles American Airlines Flight 77 was going to San Francisco. And as you could see here, through point D, which was about 9, what is this? 9:15. No, this would be, no, I'm sorry, this is 9:10. So this is 9:02. Okay. I'm sorry, this plane was going to LAX, Los Angeles, San Francisco. Los Angeles International Airport, where this plane was going. Excuse me for the error. So as you can see, it starts its descent at this point. And at this point, it was at 35,000 feet. And as you can see, it starts its descent to point E, which is about 9:08. Okay. But I mean, I want to be clear. I mean, nowhere in this, nowhere in that flight data recorder transcript does it say anything about an eastward flying swap plane. And she's assuming this already. So she's off by about a minute. So, I mean, we'll forgive her for that, but it, 9:01, 9:02, and begins flying east.
On radar and officially reported that Flight 77 began its descent while still flying west, unlike the official radar data that my colleagues for theory.
Well, no, that's not necessarily true. It didn't begin the descent at 8:54. I just showed you. And I'll share again. And look, I mean, come on now. Okay, 8:54 is right here. What does the flight data radar say? 35,000 feet. When does it start its descent? Right here. About 9:02. This is from the flight data recorder. So what you're assuming here, what you're asserting here, is basically false. It begins a descent at 8:54. Well, no, that's not true. Not according to the flight data recorder. I don't know where you're getting this from. No analytical, no transcriptal evidence shows that.
Reported that Flight 77 began its descent while still flying west, unlike the official radar data that my colleagues for Theory D rely upon so heavily.
Well, they're relying on it because it's the evidence, right? It's coming from Flight 77. You're just, I don't know, you're making that up. You have no first of all, there's no reference to any information that you're using, which shows a descent at 8:54. That's not coming from By the way, that's not coming from ATC, Indianapolis Air Traffic Control, nor is it coming from the flight data recorder. So there's your first error right there.
The same physical plane can't do both. Coincidentally,
I mean,
radar data
first of all,
that my
why do we, for God's sakes, you showed this for like a second and then you go to the next one, right? So what does it say here? Flight 77 began to descend at sea in the graphic versus the eastward flying plane didn't begin to descend until point C, point E. At 9:09, ATC reported Flight 77 missing and probably crashed to Air Force search and rescue, based on which Dale Watson, the FBI, briefed the White House that we have a report of large jet crash in Kentucky near the Ohio line. A crash was an inference based on the descent just before the transponder signal was lost. Let's listen to the Indianapolis Air Traffic Control. What was it? 9:09 and 55 seconds? Well, does it say that on ATC? That it possibly crashed into Air Force search and rescue? I mean, at no point does Indianapolis Air Traffic Control ever say that 77 had crashed into crashed in Air Force search and rescue. So what we're going to do is play the ATC. In which I don't know where I could start. Where should I start? Because there's an upload of an audio of ATC on YouTube, but I'll do this. Right, 9:36. Right, okay, I'm sorry, forgive me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the audio and let you listen. All right. A lot of dead air. You know what? I'll even do better. Hold on. Watch the video together. Why not? As you can see, even with the references here, there is no like report of any crash. And she's referring to, actually, she's saying at 9:09, ATC reported Flight 77 missing and possibly crashed to Air Force search and rescue. All right. So at no point in the ATC does it say that. So let's take a look here, right? So American Airlines is actually cleared for Flight 77 is cleared for takeoff. Okay. And I think it took off at 8 a.m. I want to say. Let's play it.
American 77, your departure frequency will be 125.05, runway 30, clear for takeoff.
555, clear for takeoff, runway 30, American 77.
Okay, so all right, I want to be punctual because I was looking. It took off. It departed at 8:10 a.m. I'm sorry, 8:20. So, okay, let's play 40. Let's play, what's 40 minutes from now? 44:29? No, because what'd she say? She said that the, what'd she say? 9:09, right? So this is 8:20, 40 minutes. So 44:29 is here, right? Right about here. Okay, so what's happening at 44:29? Right about here. I'd say right about here is when she refers to that statement. Indianapolis Center calls American Airlines Dispatch again to see if they've been able to contact Americans 11.
American Dispatch.
Yeah, this is Indianapolis Center. We I don't know if I talked to the same guy about American 77.
Yeah. I so called him, but I didn't get a reply back from him.
We lost track control of the guys in coast track, so we don't really know where his target is, and we can't get a hold of him. You guys tried him and no response?
No response.
Yeah, we have no radar contact and no communications with him. So if you guys could try him again.
We're doing it.
All right, thanks a lot.
We're doing it.
Okay, so, all right, this is around the same time where Barbara Honegger is basically suggesting that, I'm sorry, that, ATC, Indianapolis Center, reported Flight 77 missing and possibly crashed. You just heard it. That's Indianapolis ATC. Here's the audio. There's nothing in the audio that suggests this. So I don't know where she got this from. I can see why she fast forwarded this.
Colleagues for theory D rely upon so heavily. The same physical plane can't do both. Coincidentally, probably not, at exactly the time that Indianapolis civilian FAA air traffic control reported that the Dulles plane, Flight 77, had likely crashed after its descent that was seen on their radar, and put out the search and rescue call to the Air Force, military air traffic controllers later claimed that they happened to then just first pick up the plane that they claimed still was Flight 77, flying back east.
Okay, now let's again, let's go back to the ATC. Okay, let's go down to where so this is right about here is where the crash, right? Somewhere in this time frame, A77 slams to the west wall of Pentagon 937, right? So here's Tracon is contacted by Dulles and told to be on a hotline with the White House because the plane had crashed into the Pentagon here.
Hey, Dulles here. Listen, Eastern Region has us on the phone, and they ask that you be on a continuous hotline with the White House if you're not already doing it. We're doing it. Thanks, man.
Right? And then afterwards, reports of a 737 hitting the Pentagon start coming in.
Wanda.
Hi, Wanda. I don't know if you heard, but we had a crash into the Pentagon by a 737. I think it's 737 or 757. Shut down all arrivals in the National Airport.
Crash in the Pentagon. National is shut down.
Right.
At no point in the ATC does it state what Barbara Honegger is stating once again, right? She's stating that they reported the Dulles plane likely crashed and put out the search and rescue call to the Air Force. Military ATCs claimed they first picked up the never positively identified flying blip that they violated all protocol to assume and claim was Flight 77 when it was not. Right, because it was Flight 93. And FAA, the directors like Monty Belger and Jane Garvey basically withheld information regarding planes being hijacked. That's coming from the testimonies that was recorded at ATC. Now, it's on historycommons.com, but the website is currently dysfunctional. So Monty Belger and Jane Garvey and Ben Sliney, all the FAA managers and directors at the time, when they testified at the 9/11 Commission, which I have uploaded, you can see it for yourself. I even put out the names of the people that were interviewed by specific panelists of the 9/11 Commission Board. Make it easy for you. And they basically got admonished, some of them, for giving out vague and didn't coordinate with regional managers in the Northeast. Now, whether it was to basically save face or whatever, I don't know what it was, but they got in trouble for it. I mean, it didn't look good for them. Richard Benveniste and Bob Kerry basically admonished the FAA for their incompetence, even malfeasance regarding information which could have been shared. Now, somebody at New York Center basically tried to get Northeast Air Defense to come and basically react. Now, yeah, like I said, they basically tried to, New York Center basically tried to get some type of air defense to come to New York and do something. And you could hear somebody at the other line saying, well, everyone just left the room. So, yeah, the FAA screwed up. But all of this, I don't know where you got that from.
Okay. The non-coincidence of this timing is strong evidence that the military had been tracking the eastward flying plane all along.
Oh, you're assuming that. Nowhere, you can see there's no references. Nothing. Where you could see the information, check the information of what she's referring to. There's nothing here. The non-coincidence timing is strong evidence. Strong evidence has strong evidence. What information are you using to give this strong evidence? What evidence do you have that we don't, that shows that the military was tracking all these planes, or tracking 77, for example? We'll just keep it to 77. Military transponder mode that only it and not the FAA could see. Where do you get that from? What evidence are you using for that?
It's military transponder mode. Okay.
This is why I'm very, first of all, people get me a little bit misconstrued. Like, oh, wow, you're challenging, points, and you sound very, authoritarian.
Timing is strong evidence that the military had been tracking the eastward flying plane all along. It's military
like no, that's not what I'm about. If you make a strong declaration, a strong statement, where you said there's strong evidence, well, I want to see it. What do you have that I don't have? Because I want to know if it's right. And if it's right, I want to make sure other people see it.
Transponder mode. Okay.
So you fast forward again. I mean, you showed this, and then, for a second, yet again, the CVR allegedly found in the Pentagon rubble was from a different plane other than Flight 77. Not judging by what, right? The official report of the CVR found it was a magnetic tape model, but American Airlines stated in its press release shortly after this was made public that Flight 77 CVR was a modeled solid state version, but there was both. And Ken, one thing, David Chandler, Victoria Ashley, the late Frank Legge, John Wyndham, I don't know if Ken Jenkins was involved, but there was a paper, Jim Hoffman, it was a paper I saw a long time ago. It was called the Honegger Refuted, or Honegger Hypothesis Refuted. I think that was the name of it, where they outlined all the points that she made in a conference that she did called Behind the Smoke Curtain, which was held in Seattle in the year 2013. And 2 hours full, and they did this like 30-page paper, and they talked about the magnetic tape model and stuff like that. I'm going to link that at the bottom of the description box of this video so you could see it. So, because this right here is another assumption based on nothing more than her own word. I need more than that. And you know what? You should be responsible for giving more than just this. That's the reason why you skipped over it.
Okay, this is a very important book by a Dutch structural and civil engineer. It's not his real name, but it's the name on the book, Dick Koch, called 9/11.
What a name. What a name. Why would you use somebody who's not giving a real name and then not even talk about the book itself on plane swaps? And then you got to order it? I'm not ordering this book. Why don't you just tell me what information he's using to prove that there was a plane swap? This is what I get. I don't get it with people. I mean, Honegger, this may pass with most people in your circle, but it's not going to pass in the real world. Not even, especially in a court of law.
The Other Truth, which is all about plane swaps on 9/11 of at least 3 of the planes, including Flight 77, based on his detailed.
And I think this is irresponsible of you, right? You're in a conference, right? You have an hour and a half, a long time, to provide ample evidence for a plane swap, and you basically allude to a book with a fake name, Dick Koch. You probably didn't even get it. Wow.
Analysis of the radar. Okay, I'm going to go past
what are we
these,
doing here? What are we
including
doing?
Flight 77, based on his detailed analysis.
That
of
was
the radar.
fast. All right, why'd you pass over this? Cross correlation of evidence for Flight 77 swap with evidence for Flight 170 swap, officially World Trade Center 2 plane. So you're referring to In Plain Sight and Ripple Effect by Dave Von Kleist. You know what Dave Von Kleist basically says? That the plane swaps basically just happened, doesn't give evidence for it, and then says, well, the evidence is that there was a pod underneath Flight 175. And shot a missile into the World Trade Center. I don't know why you would need to shoot a missile into the World Trade Center when the plane is basically a missile, right? It's a physical missile. It's 563 pounds, 563 miles an hour, 78,000 pounds of fuel, approximately. It's a bomb. Why would you need a missile underneath the plane? Why would you need to do a plane swap? For example, why involve so many more people in the operation than just having the planes hijacked and crash near targets without obstruction? This way, you don't have to involve many people. You know who you would have to involve? NORAD. If you're doing a plane swap, you know what you have to involve? The FAA, the NTSB, every single first responder that was at the Pentagon who helped in the search and rescue. It's about 1,000 people, approximately, let's say a couple of hundred. So 22 years, 21 years, you got to make sure these people don't talk. So that means you got to have the intelligence services involved. That means manpower for every single one of these people. You know, now we're getting into the absurd category. I mean, you're making a conspiracy into a much bigger conspiracy involving so many more people when you didn't have to initially. But referring to Dave Von Kleist, I mean, you're going to refer to somebody who similarly agrees with you? That's not very unbiased, right?
Okay, I'm going to go past these.
Okay.
The FBI has withheld all wreckage, model, serial, and
Okay, this is not true at all. In fact, some of the plane wreckage is available to be viewed at the Pentagon Memorial and in New York. What makes you think they withheld all wreckage model serial numbers? I mean, they used information from the Pentagon in the Zacharias Moussaoui trial of 2006. For example, Barbara, if you're ever watching this, why didn't Zacharias Moussaoui's lawyer basically tell the judge or the court that, hey, Your Honor, the hijacked plane didn't crash into the Pentagon, which means that there were no hijackers, which means there was no terrorist operation. My client is innocent, right? So you're saying all the evidence is it's manufactured, or the technical data is manipulated. The eyewitnesses are coerced. They're lying. All of this would basically say that Zacchaeus Moussaoui is innocent beyond innocent 100%. Why isn't the truth movement declaring for his unjust imprisonment, and why isn't he calling for his release? And this is something else. I mean, what are you asserting that have you talked to the FBI, and they said no, we're not giving you the model serial numbers? Any one of which would positively identify the physical plane of the Pentagon? Well, guess what? The serial number is not in every piece of part of the plane. I mean, it's on certain parts of the fuselage, sure. It's on the flight data recorder, but you don't believe that. So and I think, to be honest, you're just looking for anything that supports your narratives here, right? Because you basically say that all the evidence at the Pentagon, which could identify Flight 77, including the human remains, are all planted anyway. So let's say they showed you a piece of the plane. Let's say they showed you a video, security video, or a video of a plane in the Pentagon. Would you believe it? You willing to change your mind? That's what you accused me of. That I'm not open to evidence. No, I'm not open to speculation. Of course not. So I don't know where you get this from. You're assuming the FBI is withholding all wreckage model serial numbers. Really? You spoke with them?
Unchanged part numbers, a single one of which would positively identify the physical plane at the Pentagon, according to the alleged FDR that they allegedly found inside
The FDR is evidence, right? The flight data recorder box that was found on September 13, 2001.
receiving exit hole. Okay. Digital clocks, I'm not going to be able to go through this, but the bottom line is the clocks prove that the official story alleged impact time was definitely not, no matter what happened at that time, 9:37 and 46 seconds. Regardless of what happened then, that is not the time of the first or even the most important violent events at the Pentagon, including the explosion of the plane at 9:32 and 30 seconds.
Okay, look at all these slides she's just gone by. It's just like, trying to make your brain open. Oh, let's talk about the clocks, right? Yeah. So, all right. There was a clock that she's referring to, and it's this clock right here. All right. So let's I'm sorry. Let me share the screen with you. So the clock that she's referring to was a clock that was found inside the Pentagon, and it's this clock. As you can see, it's 9:31. Well, what's going on here, right? But again, she's not going to show you every clock, right? The other clocks that show a different time. And to me, this is disingenuous, straight up, right? If you're an honest researcher, you show everything. And then you make an explanation as to why. Well, why is this stopping at 9:31? Did something happen? Was it an explosion like she said? Or maybe was it behind 5 minutes? Very well could be the case. Here's another clock. This was at the naval area, the Navy Annex. Look at that, 9:36. Golly gee. How about that? Here's Barbara Honegger. So here's another clock that was found at the Pentagon. Look at that, 9:36. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, Barbara, wow. Just, what do you say to that? I mean, basically, right? I'm sorry, but, I'm sorry. It's not, it's really undermines what you're trying to assert, right? It really does. Because you're saying that something happened at 9:31. Well, what happened at 9:36 that made those clocks fall? It's when the Pentagon was hit. And all right, let's just keep going.
By the heliport firehouse that stopped the heliport firehouse clock at 9:32 and 30 seconds. Okay. April Gallup's wristwatch stopped at 9:30.
That's true, by the way. There was a heliport clock I couldn't find. It stopped at 9:32. So what happened at 9:32? Right? So clocks can't be behind, I guess. So what happened at 9:36? I showed 2 clocks. I don't know. Let's keep going.
Seconds by the heliport firehouse that stopped the heliport firehouse clock at 9:32 and 30 seconds. Okay. April Gallup's wristwatch stopped at 9:30. Again, she's way over here. The alleged impact point was over here. Others.
By the way, if we're, I have to do this. Excuse me. I'm not talking about I have to do this like sneezing. Sorry, I apologize. If we're going to do this with April Gallup, then all right, let's talk about what she's about, right? So, good old April. Everybody loves using her, saying, "Oh, you see, there's no plane. She came out. She actually walked out," because she claims in a video she did an interview years back. For those who don't know, she did an interview with Citizens Investigation Team, Craig Ranke and Aldo Marquis, right? Where she basically said she walked out of the hole and she saw no plane debris. No plane debris. Well, I'm going to tell you that she didn't walk out of the hole. She fainted and she was helped out of the hole. Now, it's not me saying it. I'm going to let her own words tell you. Now, the audio I'm going to play is from the Navy Historical Center, and the interview took place on October 31st, 2001. And I'm going to play the audio. You know what? I'll share the video because you could hear the audio better, right? And I stopped it right here, okay? So I'm going to play the audio and you listen.
That's what I felt. You know, I didn't want to say it out loud because I knew it was, you know, but that's what I felt. So if they didn't come some kind of way, I don't know what they did, they made a little groove or a little way, and we got over it. They helped us climb over it, and Corporal Bruno, from what Sergeant Cruz explained to me, found a way further out, a hole, so we could follow him to get out. So they helped us get out of our trapped area, and then they helped us get the way out. And after that, they said I passed out.
Well, you heard it from her, okay? She passed out, and they helped her out. In fact, one lady carried out the baby, and this is her own words. I didn't say anything. How could she say anything like, "Oh, I didn't see any plane debris"? It's not what she says there. Okay. Also, 2011, written by Deborah Casson-Weiss at ABA Journal. Okay, September 11th survivor who claims U.S. allowed attack has sued Cheney, Bin Laden, and American Airlines. But Flight 77 didn't crash the Pentagon. Well, let's look what she says. Gallup has sued several Muslim defendants, including Osama bin Laden, as well as a bank accused of money laundering for terrorists. She's in negotiations to settle suit against American Airlines. Wow. She defends the suit against American, though she doesn't believe its plane hit the Pentagon. Now, this is the real kicker right here. If there are claims out there that these things took place that day, the airlines are liable. If they are liable, I'm one of the victims. I have to do that for my son. You could see where she's coming from. She's about the money. She isn't about her convictions, right? Nothing about her convictions. She doesn't even believe what she's saying. So there's my problem with her, using her as evidence for anything, relating to the Pentagon.
Many early press and media reports were that the Pentagon attack time was about.
As you can see, yeah, many early press reports of Pentagon attack time, 9:30 a.m. about, 9:30 a.m. about, 9:30 a.m. about, 9:30 a.m. about, 9:30 a.m. shortly after. What does that mean? Approximately somewhere between 9:30 and about, and that's where you cut it off. Because at that time, they didn't get the information about the exact time when the plane hit the Pentagon. And this is somehow evidence that a plane or explosion happened at 9:30. This is not evidence for anything. These are news reports who are basically assuming the time frame. Look, it says right here 9:30 a.m. about 4 times, right here shortly after. 9:36, 9:37, shortly after. Yeah, shortly afterwards.
9:30, which matches with her stopwatch. Official.
Barb, take another 5 minutes if
Okay.
you'd like, because I have a little emergency. So
Okay,
you
I
go
will.
right ahead. I'll be
Okay,
back.
and I'll stop 30 seconds after you come back.
Okay.
I hope to. Okay. All right. Official records and testimony also support the real so-called early, relatively official story attack time, first attack time.
By the way, as for an explosion at 9:30, why is this not backed up by any of the evidence of eyewitnesses at the Pentagon? For example, let me give you an example of this, right? Because I'm going to use a story from somebody by the name of John Yates, who is actually inside the Pentagon. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share the article, right? It's from the Virginia Pilot. At about the same time, a sergeant called Tony Rose and John Fraser to an office of the big room, where some 15 soldiers were gathered silently around the TV. Somebody walked over to John Yates' desk. 2 told him, "Hey, John, you got to see what's going on in New York." Yates strolled the roughly 45 feet to Server's cubicle and was astounded by the horror unfolding on the screen. After a few minutes, he returned to his desk and called his wife, Ellen. She hadn't seen the New York attacks, but knew of them. "Honey," she said, attempting a joke despite the quiver in her voice, "would you please, for the rest of the day, conduct business from under your desk?" Yates chuckled. "Yeah, honey, I will." He hung up and walked back to Server's cubicle. He hung up at 9:35. Right here. All right. No explosion. No reports of an explosion at 9:30. That April Gallup claims, that you claim. And these are people, one such John Yates, unless you're willing to say he's a liar or he's coerced. Then you got to show evidence for that. Okay. Just one example. I'm not going to saturate, the whole video with a million items.
The official White House internal timeline from 9/11 says 9:30. White House counsel and later Attorney General Alberto Gonzales for President Bush in a taped official Navy lecture. I have the audio tape. The Pentagon was attacked at 9:32.
Right, because he's a little bit off. I mean, it happens. People get it wrong. 9:36, 9:35, 9:37. I get it wrong sometimes, especially impact times. Right? It happens. I get a name wrong. Happens. It's not evidence for your early attack, which is not backed by anything. Anything. No physical evidence. And April Gallup. April Gallup's your only eyewitness. And I just showed you what April Gallup's about.
Again, 9:32 now is kind of rounding down from 9:32 and 30 seconds, which is the time of the stopped Helicourt Firehouse clock. The FAA official timeline says 9:32. Here is the, I got this from Professor David Ray Griffin.
Oh, great. So why don't you know what you should have done? You should have just gave like Richard Gage like a list of the items you used as evidence, and he could have put it at the bottom of the description box so that other people could see, right? Now you're saying that the internal White House timeline created on 9/11, recently released by the National Archive, the Pentagon was attacked at 9:30. Okay. Now, did they assume it was 9:30? How did they know it was 9:30 or it was a 9:30? So did they get it mixed up just like other people did? Now, I showed you the Pentagon clocks. Okay. I showed you a phone call that one guy made in the Pentagon. You're just going to select evidence that supports your narrative and yet claim that that's the evidence that supports a bomb going off in Pentagon. You better, I hope you have more evidence than that. That's not going to work at the grand jury if you ever have one. You better hope you have more.
Sent this to me, which was released from the records of the.
How come nobody in the Pentagon ever reported hearing a bomb going off at 9:30? Everybody heard an explosion at about 9:36, 37. Now, there are people in the Pentagon who thought it was a bomb that went off because they didn't see the plane. There's a lot of eyewitnesses that say that. Ton. But that doesn't say that a bomb went off in the building.
The 9/11 Commission investigator.
Why would you use April Gallup as evidence for your claim as a bomb going off, but yet you won't use evidence of 86 people who saw a plane crash into the Pentagon wall? So your one eyewitness is good enough, but 86 eyewitnesses, they're not good enough. You see the problem here?
And this is.
And by the way, I'm going to give the listing at the bottom of the description so that you can read for yourself. In fact, why don't we just go over some of the eyewitness testimonies, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this compile list of Penny Schroner and John Judge worked on this list in 2003. Analysis of eyewitness statements on 9/11, American Airlines Flight 77 crashed in the Pentagon, right? And it has a bunch of contents, list of points regarding the plane in the Pentagon, before and after the plane crashed in the Pentagon, of jet fuel, of plane clipping lampposts, a lot of pieces of information here. So why don't we start with this guy, Steve Riskus. I saw the plane hit the building. It did not hit the ground first. It did not hit the roof first. It hit dead center on the edge. I was close enough. I could see the American Airlines logo on the tail. He's got to be lying, right? Sean Boger, who you referred to. I looked up, I saw this big noise and the wings of the aircraft coming right at us, and I watched it hit the building, not the heliport, the building. Donald Boutreau. At 9:40 a.m., I was driving down Washington Boulevard alongside the Pentagon when the aircraft crossed about 200 yards in front of me and impacted the side of the building. Not the heliport. By the way, 9:40. Wow, this guy's way off, right? He's got to be lying. No, you know what? No, he's not lying. He could be telling the truth. It's not the impact. He's going against the flight data recorded time, right? Or is he assuming at about 9:40? Albert Hemphill. I walked in the office, stood peering out the window, looking at the Pentagon. As I stood there, I instinctively ducked at the extremely loud roar and whine of a jet engine spooling up. The aircraft looked to be either a 757 or Airbus, seeming to come directly over the annex. It was clean in as much as there were no flaps applied and no apparent landing gear deployed. Father Stephen McGraw. The plane clipped the top of the light pole just before it got to us, injuring a taxi driver. That would be Lloyd England. I saw it crash into the building. I saw it crash into the building, not into the heliport. And I could go on and on and on, right? Joel Schumacher. There was a sonic boom, and looking straight ahead, there was a jet which looked to be an American Airlines jet. The plane went west to east, but hit the west of the Pentagon. Another person seeing a building, the plane hitting west of the Pentagon. I mean, I won't waste you any more time. I think that's enough right there. And I'll provide that listing to
This
you.
was the internal official White House timeline that they never expected to be released to the public, but it was under an FOIA request. 9:30 a.m., American Airlines 77. Okay, at the Pentagon. And there was, of course, a flying Pentagon E-4B aircraft that was over Washington, D.C., including the Pentagon, beginning at least at 9:30. And then the Pentagon first explosion happened.
Well, man, all right, let's talk about this for a minute. You know, because the E-48 is basically just it's called it's a command and control military aircraft that's operated by the United States Air Force, right? It's the National Emergency Airborne Command Post, all right? That's what it is. It serves as a like a mobile command post under like emergency circumstances, for example. So on September 11th, an E-48 was spotted orbiting around Washington, D.C., right? And there were news outlets. I remember ABC News reporting on this. There were people who said that they could see a plane that looked like a white plane, which is basically a white plane with like a dark blue or light blue stripe in the middle. And I want to say it was Dan Verton who wrote the book Black Ice, in which he identified the E-48 taking part in exercises, operational exercises. And that when American Airlines crashed into the North Tower, the exercise was called off and it was flying back. Air traffic control, as well as radar, indicated that the E-48 Airbus was known by its tracking number as Venus 77. And Venus 77, the radar itself, is usually hard to get, right? But I'll play the radar tracking because it's on YouTube and it's one of the very few videos that has the radar of Venus 77 on the screen. So what I'll do is I'll blow this up and I'll play it, right? Right there. Venus 77 right here, Virginia. This is the radar, actual radar. DC. Sorry, you can't see it with my screen. There you have it. It's the only radar that's out there. I mean, whoever uploaded that should get 1 million likes on it because that's hard to get. But yeah, I mean, come on, man. I mean,
Okay. The Pentagon attack also, the
because if
real,
you're going to make the statement that the E-48 is the plane that made the explosion at the Pentagon, what evidence are you using? I mean, that's a remarkable statement. That's really like a poignant statement, right? And it's a serious charge when you think about it. Because in court, if you make that statement, you're held liable. And it's called a frivolous lawsuit. That's what happened to April Gallup in 2011. The judge found the case to be frivolous, so frivolous that not only did he throw Gallup's lawsuit out, but he fined her lawyers, 3 of these guys, $5,000 each, or like $15,000, for bringing such a remarkable like statement to the courts. Just unbelievable.
early time of the actual first Pentagon attack also triggered the White House and other federal building evacuations. It was also just after 9/32. Here's the proof of
Right,
that.
and see, look, even in the statements, right, at about 9:30, what does that mean? At about 9:30, right? So in other words, he didn't know exactly the time, right? So at about 9:30, that would be right, 9:37. At about 9:30, Secret Service men told staffers to run, not walk as far away as possible. Why? Because as I played for you in the ATC, that there was a warning out, hey, by the way, 11 and 175, hijackings, and they crashed in the World Trade Center. Pentagon would be next, right? The nation's under attack. I mean, the first plane, nobody really knew. Second plane, yeah, they knew. We're under attack. Pentagon would be a viable target. In fact, all throughout the years 96 to 2001, the Pentagon was a target for attack. And they ignored security protocols. There's the real conspiracy, right? We had enough warnings out there to take real good, stricter security measures for INS, for the FAA, for the nation's security, NORAD. Basically, they were doing exercises. That's the reason why these hijacked planes crashed where they could, because there was nobody to interfere with them, because in exercises with NORAD, they don't have hot guns on these planes, which means that there's no weapons on these planes. And not only that, they have to get authorization to put weapons on the planes, and then they have to get authorization to get a shoot down order. When did they get a shoot down order? Well, according to Dick Cheney and George Bush, came at 10:30. Well, after all the planes had crashed where they crashed.
When you get to my PowerPoint, in clear response to the 9/32 Pentagon attack, at 9:32, civilian airline pilots received their first high security alert to secure the cockpit.
Which all this means is that all at these times, they're getting information that basically said we need to act. Right? Airline pilots receive at 9:32. Hey, by the way, 11 and 175 were hijacked. I mean, you need, what more do you need? You need more? Because I'll give you more if you want, right? So when did the warnings go out with the ATC, right? Well, with Indianapolis ATC, here, I'll play the audio. I'll play the audio for you. And you know what? Let's watch it together. Yeah. This is Indianapolis ATC, where I'm playing at 48 minutes, where you can see Flight 135 slams into the southern facade of the South Tower. Okay? Here.
United 395, it's level 350.
United 395, Indy Center, roger.
I'm sorry, they didn't, that's right, they didn't announce it, right? So, here it is. Wait.
American Dispatch, Jim McDonald.
Indianapolis Center, did you get a hold of American 77 by chance?
No, sir, but we have an unconfirmed report that the second airplane hit the World Trade Center. And it's
Say again?
You know, we lost American 11 through hijacking. You know, American was a Boston, Los Angeles flight.
It was, all right. I can't hear what you're saying there. You said American 11?
Yes, we were hijacked, which was a Boston, LA flight. And 77 is a Dulles, LA flight. And we have an unconfirmed report a second airplane just flew into the World Trade Center.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
That's 3 minutes before, all right, because 9:20 is when, 8:20 is when 77 took off. All right, so this is 54 minutes in. So this is before 77 impacts the Pentagon, all right? As you can hear, it's reported at ATC, Indianapolis ATC, that, by the way, 11 was a confirmed hijack. It slammed into the North Tower. And 175 is an unconfirmed report that it slammed into the second tower. By the way, that news got out. And by the time the news got out, it happened at different intervals of the morning. And it just so happened that it happened at, at 9:32, one maybe at 9:34. But that doesn't prove what you're asserting. Because you're asserting that a bomb went off at 9:30 and all this came from it. Which is, you're assuming this. You're speculating. I mean, it's irrational speculation because it's not backed by any evidence whatsoever. No evidence to show that a bomb had impacted the Pentagon at 9:30, and no evidence to support that any eyewitness that was inside the Pentagon at the time heard an explosion but didn't hear the plane or see the plane crash the Pentagon. Now, I showed you eyewitness reports of people saying that they saw the plane crash into the West Wall. Not at the heliport. They didn't see an explosion. They saw the plane hit the wall. Barbara. Come on, man, right? Yeah.
Cockpits. At 9:33, an offer of interceptors was made to the Secret Service just after the second tower was hit. An offer of interceptors that had been made to the Secret Service just after the second tower in New York was hit and had been declined then was suddenly accepted by the Secret Service. And within the same minute, it suddenly acted with Bush in Florida, the Secret Service did, as if the ongoing attacks were finally real. And at the same minute, Langley Air Force Base interceptor pilot Dean Eckman received his first shoot-down order for any planes that were still non-responsive.
That's not true. The shoot-down order was given by George Bush at 10:30. I don't know where you got that from.
Coming within 30 miles of Washington, D.C.
Oh, coming from within 30 miles of Washington. I think that came from the Secret Service, by the way. But there was no official shoot down order. Now, the military chain of command goes like this: the president, the Secretary of Defense, and NORAD, right? Now, the president's in the air, Secretary of Defense is outside the Pentagon when it's hit. So who's in charge of running the country? Well, Dick Cheney. There's another conspiracy right there. He's in the PIOC. Shouldn't Rumsfeld be in the PIOC? Shouldn't he be the one giving a shoot down order?
I believe, for the reasons already given, and because of that Cheney's order in the PIOC was, in fact, a shoot-down order, as the young man, his own vice president's military aide, said to the 9/11 Commission in his testimony that the language used was for
shoot down with what? Right? So, by the way, the naval aide that came in and said it was 50 miles out was Douglas Cochran. Okay, so Douglas Cochran's coming in and telling the PIOC that the plane is 50 miles out, the plane is 40 miles out. Okay, if Cheney was a shoot down order, shoot down with what? There was no air defense within the vicinity of the Pentagon. Now, they knew Flight 77 was in the air for 30 minutes. I mean, that's reported on the news. That's a DC plane. It wasn't 93. And it certainly wasn't 11 and 175. They've already crashed. But they had a lot of time to shoot down this plane, more than on this plane than any other flight. That's a stand down order. That's not a shoot down order. How, shoot it down with what? And Cheney's order is a shoot down order? That would mean, here's the real conspiracy. If that's a shoot down order, well, he broke the military chain of command. How so? He's not supposed to give a shoot down order because he's not part of the military chain of command. It's the president, the secretary of defense, and NORAD.
Or shoot down order. And that was while Flight 77 or whatever, excuse me, I shouldn't have said Flight 77. That's why the plane that was then being watched on Dulles Air Traffic Control outside of DC, but wasn't to Washington yet, was still on its way towards DC. And even in New York City, where 2 attacks on the World Trade Centers had already happened and had not yet caused the New York Stock Exchange to be shut down. Question is why. It finally was that magic.
It has nothing to do with anything that you presented regarding the Pentagon. I don't even know why you wrote that.
Time 9:32 and 30 seconds, which is a shorthand for 9:32, which is a shorthand for 9:32 and 30 seconds, the time of the actual plane destruction by the helipad. Okay, these next slides are showing that the plane that actually came in to the helipad was white.
No, in fact, not one single eyewitness claimed to have seen a white plane crash in Pentagon. I just showed maybe about 6 statements out of 86 that said it was an American Airlines plane. But in your email to me, I want to share this because I think this is really important, and it really illuminated what you are about, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to share that email you sent to me regarding, okay? Okay, I'm going to do this. I found it. So this is what you sent to me, your own words, okay? Barbara Honegger. As for the witnesses, I do contend with which ones are the most reliable and credible. Again, as for the witnesses, I do contend with which ones are the most reliable and credible to you. The ones that you could take their statements, which are vague, and then state that they are actually against the narrative of Flight 77 crash at Pentagon, and I could twist it to where it's supporting my narrative. That's not what a credible researcher does. Sorry, nobody says that. I was the most, to me, that was the most illuminating part of the email that you sent to me.
Okay, the witnesses, the witness plane descriptions, the problem with the witnesses is that they are all over the map.
No, they're not. In fact, I'm going to leave it up to the people to make that decision for them because it's overwhelming in the favor of American Airlines plane crashing into the Pentagon wall. They never said it was a white plane. They never said it crashed in a heliport. Neither one of them. I have 86 on record. Okay, 86. And I'm going to leave it in the description box. I'm not even going to lead anybody anywhere. I'm going to let the evidence speak for itself.
You have to use your judgment as to.
No, you have to use your critical thinking skills, and you have to use honesty, right? You have to look at this subject like a real independent investigator, right? And an investigator doesn't say, well, you know what? I know what didn't happen here before he even looks at anything. In other words, he doesn't have a preconceived mindset of what is right and what is wrong. He wants to know what is right and what is wrong at every crime scene. Well, how does he do that? Well, he goes by the evidence which is located at the crime scene. And he goes and interviews eyewitnesses at the crime scene. What he doesn't do is interview eyewitnesses who aren't at the crime scene. Why would he do that? They're not evidence. They're not evident to anything.
Which witnesses are the most reliable witnesses, both in terms of credibility and where they.
Well, if I just showed 6, okay, and there was a lot more I could have, are they credible? In the email, You wouldn't think so, because in the email, you are the one saying, only I chose certain eyewitnesses that agree with me, that you found credible. That your own words. Your own words, Barbara.
Were so that they were in a position to actually see and know. Plain descriptions in this witness compilation. I recommend you read it.
And I'm back, Barb.
Okay, and you will find that they claimed it was a large plane, a small plane, 757, 737, white plane. Plane had stripes, was a commuter jet, it was a missile with wings. You have to use your judgment. So I'm going to end with this slide.
All right. I'm going to end it right there because, I did enough. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide in the bottom of the description, the eyewitness listing, the David Chandler paper, Pentagon hypothesis refuted, because it goes into far more descriptive detail than I did here in the video. I'm going to give you the flight data recorder, where it basically shows the descending of the plane, which is contradictory to what Honegger asserts. And that's about it. I'm also going to link the ATC recording as well. I think that's important to have. So that all these pieces of information that I'm showing you is a contradiction of what Honegger asserts in this 10-minute video. And that's all I need to do, really. I'm going to let the evidence speak for itself rather than myself. And it's not me speculating. I'm using physical, analytical, and technical data to prove that American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon wall. Have a good night, everybody.